Alrighty guys, welcome back to another video. So I saw in the comments of the ITX build video that some of you wanted to know how the dust kind of accumulates in the case over time. Around mid-October, I bought a new cooler which was even larger, which stuck out even farther from the case. And I know all of you are just cringing right now, but that previous cooler was also not cooling my CPU well enough. So I decided, well, let's see if they make something bigger with the same footprint, and I found something. So that's what's on here right now. But I'll put the two model numbers here on the screen just so that you can see what they look like. But I'm just gonna do kind of a rotate around to see what it looks like, and then I'm gonna disassemble the computer to just show you how the dust is accumulating. So the top, you can see these fans are just atrocious. Oh my goodness, they have a lot of dust, and I cleaned this since the last video. I'll try and figure out the day that I actually cleaned this last, but I haven't cleaned it since October, I would say. But yeah, it's gotten pretty dirty. So, and then if we rotate it, look at the front of that radiator. It's just absolutely nasty. The top, I try to spray down occasionally with compressed air, so that helps. The bottom, not gonna be too dusty. Front, not too dusty. You can see my RAM pushes this out ever so slightly because it's the G-Skill RGB RAM. And then the back, also not too bad, to be completely honest. The fan for the, get that in focus, the fan for the power supply also seems to not be too negatively impacted. I added this fan on the side just to see if it would help with cooling. As you can see in between the blades there, we've got quite a bit of dust also piling up on there. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to tear this down and really see how much has kind of gotten out of hand. So let's first just start by taking off these side panels. I think sometimes the hardest part about this case is just figuring out how to set it so you can actually work on it. But that's also partially my fault because I've got so much garbage just sticking off the sides. All right, so we've got the back panel disconnected, or we've got the back panel unscrewed. Just gonna disconnect this SSD here so that this panel is completely free. All right, so the underside of this panel, you can see there's definitely dust accumulating on this screen. Well, it's not really even a screen, I'd just call it a panel. So that's really dusty. I just blew away some dust that was sitting there, and that wasn't a good idea because then you guys won't see it completely accurately, but that was just stuff in the air primarily. All right, now let's switch this over. So here's the top of the case. I'm guessing the dust is worse because I had a fan blowing in to magnify this fan blowing through the radiator. So it's probably worse than it actually would be because of that huge, large fan on the exterior, but all that dust everywhere. See all that on the cables in there as well. But then if you notice, like down here, the dust really isn't too bad. So at least my airflow is working well. I think if you were able to use a bunch of nice screens on the inside of this, it would help tremendously. And if we look at the top here, I'm going to take this panel off. All right, so now let's look at this side here. Nothing too crazy other than you can kind of see the dust inside of there better now. Nothing on the bottom too bad. On the fan, another angle. It's pretty dusty, I'm not gonna lie. All right, let's keep on going. So now the next step in just disassembling this thing is to take out these two standoff screws because they hold the front on when the panels are off. The panels are like the last step in holding everything together. As I take these two screws off, this whole front part will slide out. Let the cables free as the dust flies. All right, unplug the power plug in the front. That's what this little red and black cable is. So now, and then just slide this up a bit here so you can see it in frame. Got to unplug the 2 top fans from the motherboard. There we go. Okay. Let's see if I can kind of set this aside. There. Let's see here. The underside, pretty dusty. Yeah, so I would recommend cleaning this more than I do, but when it's such a pain in the neck to take apart the whole thing, it's kind of hard to get yourself to do that, you know what I mean? Okay, so now let's just see if we can take a look at this back area here. The underside of the case is not too bad. Let's pull the graphics card off next. How about that? Here I'm just removing the 2 screws that hold the riser cable in place for the graphics card. Kind of small screws, and I've got kind of big hands, so. Next, another fun part of this case is just bending things around so that it actually comes off. Unlatch this back piece to pull the riser off. So here's the graphics card. It's pretty dusty, but like honestly the radiator inside's fairly clean. It's more just dirty on the exterior. So here it is. This graphics card also, by the way, is insane and kind of rare, but it's made by Gigabyte. And it's a 2070 Mini ITX model, so it's like basically the best card I think you can buy for a Velka 3. Most people use 2060s because I think they're easier to get a hold of, but the 2070, it's got 8 gigabytes instead of 6 gigabytes of VRAM, and I think even a faster core speed as well. So yeah, very, very happy about this card. Set this to the side since it's for the most part cleaned off. Is it just me, or are you guys also kind of freaked out when liquid comes out of your compressed air? I don't exactly know what liquid that is, but I'm not too happy about that. I don't like seeing that coming out of there when it's probably headed straight towards components on an electrical board. I think what we're going to do here next is remove the power supply. That's not true, I lied. Remove this last motherboard standoff screw. I think then the motherboard will come out nicely. There's a little hook at the bottom, right down here. You can see that? The metal plate that the motherboard mounts to goes on there, so that's what I was missing. All right, let's get some of these cables out of the way the best we can. Getting the CPU power. This riser cable is also really dirty. Gonna unplug that so that you can clean that off. They include this in the case now, but when I bought it, you had to buy it extra. It's like, how on earth are you gonna even use this case without it? I guess if you maybe didn't have a graphics card at all, but who does that? That's no fun. And then this is just a fan splitter. Plug it. And the motherboard power supply. Those are the 3 main standoffs that are used to connect. No, they don't. They are everything I think that's used to connect the motherboard to the metal panel it sits against, but it's some of the main things. I hate unplugging the motherboard power supply. I'm always afraid I'm gonna like rip the socket right off the motherboard. There we go. But this case comes in a bunch of different parts. So now what I'm doing is I'm just removing the power supply. It's only held on by these two screws down here. Everything kind of just holds on to itself by a thread, and then you put the outer panels on and it holds everything inside, and then you're good to go. Too crazy. This panel comes with the motherboard itself. This is kind of dirty. Maybe clean that down too. Then this is just my power supply. Let's give that a nice spray off. There we go. So just kind of clean the power supply up a bit. Make sure to never spray compressed air directly at one of these fans, because oftentimes it'll get the fan spinning so fast it can burn out the fan motor or cause weird noises. So another suggestion. That's basically everything. I mean, the cases, there's not a whole lot to it. There we go. Got that fairly cleaned up. You can still kind of see the dust marks of where the fans were. But I guess one thing I will mention is all of this information is pretty translatable to the newer version. It's just got a new aesthetic. It's basically the same size as far as I can tell. So this video applies if you want to pre-order one of the newer Velka 3s. Look at that, just hitting that with some compressed air, really cleaned it up. So yeah, I guess if you have this case, I'd recommend taking off the panels pretty frequently, like at least once a month, and just spraying stuff down with compressed air. Just be careful that none of that liquid leaks out on your build, but if you do that, that should really help keep the dust down. Like, I just occasionally spray mine from the exterior and it really does nothing. But when you take the panels off, I mean, this fan is basically almost perfectly clean now that I sprayed, just with it even mounted to the panel. I figure since I'm this far, I'll just take the whole entire case apart and wash all of the metal panels. All right, the last thing I was gonna do, and don't really have to do this, but oh no. Oh my goodness. I lied. I think it's worse than I thought. Also doesn't help that I have Otis. I think Otis, his hair helps things catch on stuff. So like, this fan is definitely dirty. But then look at the radiator. Holy cow. And I think my dog's hair is just helping all of that stay in place. So here's the back panel. It's not too dirty, honestly. This is a different story though. I'm gonna have to take this outside. Clean that off. Holy cow. Alright, so rather than just blowing it down, I actually wiped down the front of it and then just blew the rest out. I didn't want to blow on the radiator and then just have all of that translate to the rest of the motherboard. You can see there's a little bit of dust down here at the bottom, but nothing too crazy. Thanks for watching. I hope that teardown of the Velka 3 was helpful, and I encourage you to manage your dust better than myself. Again, also just know that this is probably what will happen if you use the Velka 3 case in its stock form. And if you like this content, or you want to see some overlanding content, check out the rest of the videos on my channel. Thanks again. I'll catch you in the next video.